Let's start by just reading through. In 1994, almost 200 years after the death of this person, the International Astronomical Union would finally acknowledge the contributions of this person, who they said was an astronomer and author of something. So, just starting over, in 1994, almost 200 years after the death of a person, this union would acknowledge the contributions of this person, naming a crater on Venus after her. So let's talk a little bit about the word would. Would gets used to describe the future from the perspective of the past. For instance, Martin Luther King would go on to become one of the greatest civil rights leaders of all time. Or Babe Ruth would go on to hit so many home runs. So if you're in the past, but you're talking about the future from that point, you tend to use the word would. And that's happening here because in 1994, the union would do something. What's really confusing about this question is the way the person is named. The International Astronomical Union would acknowledge the contributions of. Everything I'm underlining here in blue is just a synonym for the person's name, which is incredibly complex. But the gist of it is, in 1994, almost 200 years after the death of the person, the Union acknowledged the contributions of that person, naming a crater on Venus after her. Now let's read it literally. In 1994, almost 200 years after the death of Wang Zhenyi, the International Astronomical Union would finally acknowledge the contributions of the barrier-breaking 18th century astronomer and author of Dispute of the Precession of the Equinoxes, naming a crater on Venus after her. And if you read that way every single time, then that's absolute murder, and you shouldn't do it. Instead, you should read the way we were reading toward the beginning of this video.